sector, money which is being used to buy, for one bank to buy another. It's leading to more concentration in the financial sector, and that seems to be the main result. Now, having said all that, the biggest problem that the United States faces is not the financial crisis. It's the deindustrialization of the country by global corporations that move their plant equipment offshore in order to produce with cheaper labor and in order to avoid the American level of compliance costs. And it's here that the job loss is long-term and permanent, and we're losing the higher income jobs that were ladders of upward mobility for the American people, and so we're closing down the United States as an opportunity society. This receives no attention. Everyone's going on about the bailout, but the more serious crisis continues to be ignored.
Yeah, it amazes me we can't build furniture or towels or produce anything here in America, but we're supposed to believe that we can still manufacture automobiles. And like you said, the money that was allotted for the bailout supposedly to help the people on Main Street has went to the very bankers that orchestrated the collapse, and they've got the money and they're holding it. The American people should be in the streets screaming bloody murder. Do you agree?
Yes, I do agree with that. But when it comes to the point that they have nothing else to lose, maybe that will happen. On the other hand, Americans are not the same people they used to be, and it may be that it's easy to turn them into serfs.
Absolutely. Dr. Roberts, this is Brian. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I would like to get your perspective on the possibility of entering into a period here of hyperinflation. We've seen a monetary base increase of 75% just over the last several months. Do you see hyperinflation in our future?
Well, that depends on how the bailout is financed, and it depends on whatever sort of stimulus program that the new administration comes up and how it's financed. The increase in the monetary base doesn't necessarily lead to an increase in the money supply, as long as the banks aren't lending, and as long as Americans are already over their heads in debt and can't borrow anymore. The monetary base just means the banks have a lot of reserves. Where the hyperinflation, and in the meantime, I think we're going to have a considerable amount of deflation. Where the hyperinflation comes in is how will they finance what appears is going to be a massive budget deficit of somewhere between $1 and $2 trillion in 2009. The United States has never, ever tried to borrow that much money in 1 year. The world doesn't have that many reserves to lend us in 1 year, and the world needs whatever reserves it has because they're infected with the toxic financial instruments that Wall Street spewed out all over the globe. So they have to deal with their own problems that we've caused them. So the question is, where does the money come from to finance an American budget deficit in 2009? Probably $2 trillion. There's no place for it to come from except for them to print the money. Most likely, the Treasury will print up the bonds, give them to the Federal Reserve, which will print up the money and give it to the Treasury. That is where the beginnings of hyperinflation would start, because there would be a massive amount of addition to the supply of money. The government simply be printing it to pay its bills the way banana republics used to do. Weimar Germany was forced to do by the Versailles Treaty. And that, once that starts, the rest of the world may lose whatever remaining confidence it has in the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. And if they began fleeing their dollar holdings, seeing the writing finally on the wall, that would worsen the inflation problem and lead to further declines into the dollar. And then you would see the whole population trying to flee it. And if the velocity of money turns up, that is the rate of turnover, because nobody wants to hold the dollars, that would then add to the inflation. So yes, there could be a bad inflation in the future. It really depends on how the deficit that's looming before us is financed.
Do you think that, as we've seen 2,000 troops coming home, and then this past week it was reported 20,000 troops coming home to be deployed in America, is that a mere coincidence, or do you think that the government perhaps is preparing us for the possibility of an economic collapse and martial law here in America on the streets, as was told on the floor of the Congress before they passed the first bailout?
I just don't know. I have no way of knowing. What we do know is that the Bush administration is essentially lawless, and that the Democrats in Congress did nothing to constrain the lawlessness. And we know that deploying troops for action against civilians is against the Posse Comitatus Act, which they seem to have repealed by presidential directive, something that I'm not sure is legal. And so when you see them doing these things, you wonder what is the point. But of course, the brigade, 20,000 troops, would not suffice to control the population. I mean, they've had 150,000 in Iraq, which is a relatively small place compared to the United States, and weren't able to control even Baghdad. They had to end up simply putting the insurgents on the American payroll and pay them to stop fighting. So I don't really, they're going to have, if you start seeing, 1 million troops deployed, and even that, a country the size of the United States could not be occupied by merely 1 million troops. And you'd have to expect these troops to line up with a government that's inflicted so much damage on their own fellows. And why do troops do this? Are they so brainwashed and mindless that the soldiers would come out against the American people on the side of the criminals in Washington? I just don't know what they would do.
Dr. Roberts, we're about to leave behind, in my opinion, the worst administration in the history of our country, the Bush administration. And of course, we're going to have an Obama administration here shortly, in which promised change. And of course, through all of his appointments, we're seeing absolutely no change whatsoever. Robert Rubin, of course, Madeleine Albright, Richard Holbrooke, Rahm Emanuel, Hillary Clinton, the list goes on and on and on. But what do you think about this? I mean, obviously there's no change here.
Yes, it's obvious there's no change. They're all retreads from the Clinton administration, and which you have to remember was also a war criminal administration. It bombed Serbia, killing civilians. It did all sorts of things that we put other people on trial for. And so there's no change, and I wrote that a while back. Conned again, I said. And certainly the people have been. The changes that will occur will have nothing to do with Obama or his administration. The changes will come from the dire economic condition that the United States is in. There's, in the last 3 months alone, we've lost 1.25 million jobs.
Man.
And I think